This video contains spoilers for the following 3 games: Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, as well as Definitive Edition and Torna, as there's a comparison between those 5 games, which in essence is 3 games. It's weird. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is our first game on the chopping block in our first category, that being story. It itself is a pretty basic story to begin with, since it's more or less reason to go ahead and explore Bionis, since that's honestly all you need, especially at the start of the game. Just a reason to start this adventure, a reason to get to know these characters and to bond with them, so you can then grow bonds, feel attached to them, and then when the story actually starts to pick up and you start to learn more about the world, more about why this character's fighting, you're invested. I love this game's story. It's easily the best in the franchise. Like, no contest, in my opinion. I love the game. I love the cast, which we'll get into in a future section. But, like, the story itself, well, being bare bones to begin with, once you enter Mechonis, you learn what really happened in this world. And then, once you learn all that, Shulk realizes what he's been doing is wrong. Because this whole game, and it has a ton of foreshadowing, which I love, including a line super early on in the game where Shulk says, there's 2 voices in my head. One telling me to stay here, and one telling me to seek revenge. That other voice being Zanza, who is in Shulk's body. It's filled with a ton of foreshadowing, which I love. And then when Shulk gets shot, that's when the plot starts to beat up. You feel emotional. And this is something I'll mention later, but the score is fantastic. It's my second favorite in the series, and has perfect timing in so many sections. But the story itself is fantastic, and I love it to death. I really do love this game. Now, of course, there's also Future Connected, which is pretty underwhelming. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a fun 20-ish hour campaign, and it's worth playing through. But the thing with Future Connected is it pretty much exists not to do things like wrap up loose ends, but to allow Xenoblade 1's story to work with the rest of the series, since Xenoblade 1 was not written with the intent of being a franchise. It was not meant to get sequels. So Xenoblade 1's story doesn't work with the rest of the series unless they were to actively change things, which they did. And I'm glad it does. It just leaves Future Connected feeling less like an epilogue, like it was advertised, and more like a bandage. Xenoblade 2, on the other hand, while having a story that works with the rest of the series, frankly, doesn't have nearly as interesting of a story. I love its cast, and it's probably the only cast that could beat Xenoblade 1 in my opinion. But its story feels cliche at a lot of times, as well as, frankly, not being nearly as interesting as 1. Which I initially held against this game, but as it's aged, I've realized something. Xenoblade 2's story is extremely character-driven. That's why it isn't as story-heavy, because essentially each chapter acts as a mini-arc for one of the characters. And with the game ending, wrapping up, not Shulk, Rex's arc. I love this game's story now that I can think about it more. It's still the weakest, and seriously has an unnecessary amount of fan service. No, it's genuinely unnecessary. But overall, it actually isn't that bad when you consider how much of the game is good and how much of the story is enjoyable. Albeit a bit cliche and nowhere near as phenomenal as Xenoblade 1. But it's a story that works, it does what it needs to do, and it works with the rest of the series incredibly well. And, again, is carried by its cast. There's, of course, Xenoblade 2's sub-story in Torna the Golden Country, which is fantastic. Honestly, I can praise Torna Torna a ton. Its biggest flaw is its length, it being short. But in reality, my thoughts on it, and I'm probably just gonna say this here, for a lot of aspects, it's basically just Xenoblade 2 without a lot of the fluff and just polished down to its best. I really wish that Xenoblade 2 was as good as Torna is in so many ways. I love Xenoblade 2 a lot. And it just happens to be this first section of story isn't Xenoblade 2's strong suit. Which is sad, because this game is fantastic and it still is a really good story. But since I'm putting characters in their own section, Xenoblade 2, with a more character-focused story, gets points taken away from it for its story, if that makes any sense. And Torna's story is equally fantastic with an equally likable cast of characters that explores them, and more accurately, explores the villains of Xenoblade 2. As I said, with this game being so character-focused, learning the motivations and backstory behind the villains is really interesting and really fun, making them probably some of my favorite villains, if not my favorite villains in the series. Not because I don't love 1 and 3s, but solely because they have so much more backstory and I can both sympathize with them and know what they're doing is wrong. They're just good villains in that regard. And of course, the newest Xenoblade game, and the one without the little bonus content, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Its story's fun. I honestly might put it below, like I'd put it above 2 since it's not as character focused, but I definitely put it below 1. I adore Xenoblade 2 on both a story, not Xenoblade 2, Xenoblade 3 on a story level. It's a fun story with reasons to do things, and some of my biggest problems with its story are the fact that there is a constant time crunch on your hands in Mio dying in 3 months, and then you definitely spending more than 3 months. It's like, oh yeah, let me just do 50 hours of side quests before we progress the story. Mio, how are you not dead? That breaks the immersion a little bit, but I also find it hilarious. It's a case of, it's fun, the story's great, this is the one I'm going to say the least about because it's the newest, and deserves the most people to experience it. Overall, if you want a story, give it to Xenoblade 1, and here are the points on screen, since all categories will be rated out of either 10 or 5. I figure it's easiest to show you this, so that way you understand. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is what we're starting out with for the characters. Now, this cast, pretty good. Easily the second weakest cast out of the Xenoblade series, but we're not including X in this video because X is so different, and frankly, it'd be hard to compare X to everything else when it's evidently a black sheep. Or should I say a shiny Wooloo. But I love Xenoblade 3's cast, it's great. The biggest problem with it is how the story is written. The characters are designed a lot more to bounce off of one specific other character. They're pretty much always paired up. Noah and Mio, Lance and Senna, Uni and Taion. I love Uni, she's amazing. She's basically Nia Light, which you're going to hear how much I love Nia in a second. I generally like the entire party. There's no one I really hate. I kind of hated Taion at first, but he's grown on me a lot throughout the entire course of the game. The problem comes down to, it's more, they don't really interact with anyone outside of the major 3. You kind of just get the 3 that, like the 2 that they're paired up with and Noah. Or, well, I guess 4, because they're also paired up usually with some random side character, be that a hero, or just an NPC that's in a hero quest. But, I love the cast. Something I noticed about Xenoblade 3 while making this is it's very much an in-between of Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2 in terms of characters and story. Which is not bad, considering Xenoblade 1 is one of the best stories ever. And Xenoblade 2 is still really good, despite being easily the weakest that isn't Xenoblade X. Because again, I need to just make X its own video. I'm not counting this part of this because it's so freaking different. But this cast, I really like. The big problem is they really were designed to work off of one specific other party member. Which isn't bad necessarily, but one, a lot of characters in the other games are designed to work off of one or two other party members. But compare that to Xenoblade 2's cast, where the characters are based to work around one or two party members, they still work around every single one. As for Xenoblade 2's cast, well, being a bit harder to measure since blades exist, I'll be counting basically the drivers and the story blades for the sake of this purpose. Like how I wasn't really counting heroes for 3. Rex is pretty generic and pretty boring. Pyra is so freaking precious. Like, not precious, but like, she's so freaking sweet and gentle. It's nice. Mithra is pretty much the polar opposite, which works really well since they are designed to be polar opposites and designed to work off of all 3. But frankly, Pyra and Mithra work off really well with everyone. Rex doesn't work off really well with anyone because he's very generic. Dromark, I don't really care about. I'm gonna be honest. Nia is Uni on steroids, and it's amazing. One of my biggest problems with 3's depiction of Nia is, since she's a queen, she's putting on this front of being regal, and it just doesn't work for Nia as a character, because Nia is impatient, brash, vulgar to an extent. Nia is very much snarky. It just doesn't work when she's trying to be regal. I love Nia. She's great in Xenoblade 2. Tora, fantastic. Like, genuinely. I know a lot of people don't like him. I do. He's a good not-Bond character. Poppy. Literally my favorite character from Xenoblade 2, and I think the only characters from the entire franchise that come close to her for me is Shulk and Fiora. Both of which you'll hear about in a minute. But Poppy is so freaking precious. She's like just this pure entity of adorableness, and it's amazing. Morag and Bridget are both great. They kind of play more of the straight character, like the straight man, to everyone else, since everyone else is to an extent weird, like wacky. And they do a great job of that, and I really like them. And then you have Zeke and Pandoria. Oh, Zeke and Pandori. Oh my god, they're great. Like, genuinely, Zeke is probably one of the, like, easily top 10 Xenoblade characters. I don't even like Zeke that much. He's not even close to my favorite character in Xenoblade 2. But he's freaking amazing. Like, he's hilarious. He's this bumbling idiot that has this kind of attitude and face of, I am really good. I am, like, the best. And Pandora just kind of lets him get away with that, and they all just work off of each other so well. It's so great. The entire cast is great. They're probably my favorite cast in the entire series. The only two I'm not that fond of are Dromark, which sucks, and Rex, who we can generally just agree isn't that interesting. He's fine, works off the rest of the party fine, but I don't really have anything to say about Rex other than he's fine. Torna has a weaker cast than 2. But overall, I really like him. Adam's great. He works well off of Mithra. Laura is genuinely just Rex done well. Bridget's equally as great as always. Jin, I really like seeing the backstory for him and how he became, well, the monster that he is in Xenoblade 2. And also, this is probably a good time to mention, Torna is being counted as part of 2 for the sake of this video, and Future Connected is being counted as part of 1, and if we will release this in about 2 years' time, I'd be counting the Xenoblade 3 DLC as part of Xenoblade 3. Just figure I'd get that out of the way. But yeah, good cast. Overall, a pretty much light version of the Xenoblade 2 main cast. But also they have a lot less time to interact. Alright, Xenoblade 1. Shulk is the best protagonist in the series. He's amazing, I love him, he's great. He's still a bit one note for protagonist, but he's a protagonist. They're all usually kind of generic in any RPG because they're meant to be a vessel for the player. Shulk is probably the best protagonist in my opinion, like just in any game. I love Shulk, he's great. Super well written, super well voice acted. I love him so freaking much, he's great. Rein, I would call him Zeke light. I like him nowhere near as much as, for example, Zeke. But he's still a great character. It's more accurately, he's Zeke just taken down a notch, which is completely fine, and I still really like him, especially since Xenoblade 1 is a more serious story. Then, of course, you have Dunban. Fantastic mentor character. Really love him. I don't really have much else to add for him, honestly. And after that, we, of course, have... This is, like... I'm gonna tackle these two together. Ricky and Melia. You may be wondering why I'm tackling them together. They're introduced at the same time. Ricky, fantastic comic relief. He's literally so in debt that his village kicked him out. Like, he's genuinely so in debt he was kicked out and forced upon the party. Which should probably say something. That your character is so in debt that he was kicked out. But, I love that. He's adorable, he's amazing, he's a surprisingly great father, he's 40. Anyway, let's move on to a character that's 10 years older than him, Melia. Yeah, Melia's 50. I feel like I need to bring this up because she looks like she's 16. But yeah, Melia's 50. She's great, like, genuinely, really great character. I love her. I don't really have much else to add. She has a great arc. I feel really bad for her. I mean, we're talking about a character who sees her entire race die in front of her. But I love Melia. She's great. Fiora, mentioned her earlier, one of my favorite characters in the franchise, and also the character I play as in Xenoblade 1. Sucks that I chose the character that doesn't get added till 70 hours into the campaign, but that is besides the point. Fiora is sweet. She's great. Works really well off of the rest of the party. That's the thing with the Xenoblade 1 cast. They pretty much all work off of each other incredibly well. None of them have as high highs as Xenoblade 2, but I've always kind of referred to them as this, just back when Xenoblade 1 and 2 were the only games in the series. Xenoblade 2 has higher highs and lower lows, and Xenoblade 1 is just a lot more consistent. Every character is great. There aren't really any characters that are fantastic, in my opinion, but none of them are bad. Then you have Kino and Nene. Kino is annoying. I hate him. Well, I don't hate him, but he's annoying. And also... Oh yeah, I forgot Charla! She's forgettable. She pretty much has an affair with Rein in the main story. So, take that as you will. I genuinely forgot to mention Charla. Look, this video is roughly scripted. I have, like, bullet points. I forgot Charla existed. And Nene is sweet. Generally, I really like the future connected characters. Nowhere near as much as the Xenoblade 1 main cast, but I still like them. And I genuinely forgot Charla existed. That should say something. These are the new points allotted to the characters for the cast category. Now let's move on to category 3, Exploration. Exploration is a massive part of the Xenoblade series, evidently since Xenoblade X is literally an open world game. Now first up is Xenoblade 1, and I'll be grouping both additional epilogue and prologue campaigns as part of them, because in reality, they just add one new area to explore, and I think it's easier to do this way. Xenoblade 1, I really love exploring a good chunk of the areas. Exploring, for example, Gower Plains and the ice area is really fun. It was really neat to see the Bionis shoulder get reused in Future Connected. Like, overall for Xenoblade 1, there's an easy, like, 3-4 locations that are really fun to explore. A good chunk that are enjoyable, nowhere near as fun. Oh, forgot Aerith Sea. Aerith Sea is a really interesting case for me. Because, beautiful. It's gorgeous. This entire world is gorgeous. But Aerith Sea especially so. I love it so much. It's beautiful. I hate traversing it. Because you have these islands, and then a good chunk of it's on the ground, and swimming sucks in this game because it's so slow. Generally, the one thing holding Aerith Sea back is literally the fact that that swimming is so slow in this game. If you get seen by an enemy in Xenoblade 1, you're screwed. You can't attack in water. You just have to keep running. That really holds this game back. Which sucks. Because it's good. And I like it. But, and then there's the, I can't remember its name, but it's like the marshy swamp area that is bioluminescent. Oh my god, that place is gorgeous. It's amazing. The thing is, exploration, some areas aren't that fun to explore. But your reward is, well, technically experience. In reality, I find the reward for exploring is the scenery. Finding the secret areas that give you, like, a cool, really cool looking thing that looks beautiful, or a great view on this amazing world is fun. And exploration rewards include heart-to-hearts, which I was gonna give their own dedicated section until I realized Xenoblade 3 doesn't have them. And/or I did not see a single heart-to-heart in 130 hours of gameplay. But either way, like, heart-to-hearts, great reward, because they're just small little cutscenes that matter nothing to the plot and add benefit and stuff to the characters. I love them. Xenoblade 2's exploration increases on Xenoblade 1's in every single way. Overall, worlds are bigger. There's more to explore. There's more stuff in every corner of the world. The world is split up into smaller sections, which makes them easier to fully explore. Generally, really like exploration in Xenoblade 2. And that's really all I have to say. As much as I would love to say Xenoblade 2 exploration is fantastic, there's 2 areas I remember exploring. Gormont and Morardane. That's it. I love Xenoblade 2's exploration, but I'm realizing it's kind of forgettable and really annoying at certain parts, especially in Gormont, where you have to get, like, diamond oak wood, and it's, like, only spawns in one specific area, but the game doesn't tell you where, and it was a pain. I spent, like, 10 hours trying to get that stupid wood. But I love this game. It has its flaws. And technically, it's the oldest game we'll be looking at in this video. So, yeah. But also, it makes me excited to replay the game, because I don't remember a lot of the exploration. I remember, oh yeah, and Araya. I don't know, the game, I love it, but its exploration falls kind of flat compared to the rest of the series. The only Xenoblade game that tops 3 in terms of exploration is X. The one that was designed and advertised around exploration. I love Xenoblade 3's world. Even small things like the map not being filled in automatically add so much, because you want to fill it up. You want it to be full. Areas that don't really have stuff still have containers, or husks, or fights, or skirmishes, or side quests, or NPCs. Generally, this entire world, every corner of it, has something to do, which is fantastic. I explored so much of this world, and I wasn't bored a single moment. Exploring Xenoblade 3's world is fantastic, and that is, in fact, due to the fact that there is literally no empty space. There isn't a single area, at least that I explored, that feels pointless. Even small things like, hey wait, this map continues upwards into this weird small hallway I didn't notice. Oh, this is a secret area, sweet. Even the areas that don't feel like they have a use lead into secret areas, or will later contain something like a quest. The entire world is filled up to the fullest, even if it's something small like a husk or a container. Just the fact that everything is there and there is something to do everywhere adds so much to this, and I cannot praise that enough. Next up in our categories, Xenoblade 3 takes its lead, and the first time it does this. And Xenoblade's next round is combat. Who would have thought the action RPG needs to have a category on combat? And this is where things are going to get interesting, because I played Xenoblade 2 wrong. But for now, we're talking about Xenoblade 1. And its combat, it's good. I like it. My only complaints with it are the AI, which will be included in this section. Because, for example, sometimes enemies have spikes in Xenoblade 1, and the only way to deal with that is for Shulk to use Minato Cyclone. Now, here's the problem. Shulk as an AI loves spamming Minato Buster. Like, Shulk, we have died 20 times to this boss. All you need to do is use Minato Cyclone. Minato Buster, got it. Shulk, for the love of God, use Minato Buster. Now, Shulk's AI sucks. Melia's AI is like, you know how I'm supposed to store up my elements so I can buff you guys? Well, fire, fire, fire! Yeah. Xenoblade 1's combat system is fantastic. Its problems come down to the AI is stupid. Really, really stupid. Which the solution is play as Shulk or Melia yourself to get their ability to deal with Telethia. Preferably Shulk, because that also gives you the ability to deal with spiked enemies. And then throw 2 party members on that the AI can play as without failing miserably. Alright, sure, that works. Future connected. So, your options are Shulk, Bootleg Rhine, Bootleg Charla, and Melia. And I haven't addressed her yet in combat. Charla's awful. She's the designated healer of the group. Doesn't sound that bad. Until you realize everyone with a party heal is a better healer than her. Shulk's little like 20% HP heal, better than Charla. Ricky's better than Charla. Literally anyone that isn't Charla, better than Charla. Essentially, Charla sucks at her one job at being a healer. So with Future Connected, you're stuck with essentially Nene as a must-have, since she's literally the only character the AI can play that isn't Charla. Followed by Shulk and Melia. And Shulk and Melia's AIs suck. So unless you want to have Charla in your party, you're screwed. Yeah, my biggest complaints come down to the AI in this game sucks, and Charla is horribly bad. Xenoblade 2. The one where the DLC is getting its own section, because its combat engine is so different. Xenoblade 2's combat is interesting, to say the least. It doesn't help that almost every character plays the exact same as everyone else, because every character can use pretty much anyone's abilities, and Rex can literally use any character's moveset. So that's interesting. But it kind of ruins a lot of the interesting stuff, and frankly, the blade system, I love the idea, it sucks in execution, because, hey, so you want to 100% the game? Just get this 0.01% chance to happen. What? Yeah, this is a gotcha game now. Yeah, the blade system's interesting, but it's also integral to combat, because you don't want to be using common blades, because they are worse. They're not bad, they're just objectively worse than rare blades. And you're only given like 10 rare blades for the main story, which most of which go to Rex. So, like, I think Rex gets 3 story blades, I think, plus the ability to use any blade. Nia gets 1 story blade. Tora gets 2 story blades and a side quest. Morag gets 2 story blades. Zeke gets 1. So if you want to play as Zeke or Nia, hope you like gambling. But the combat system is somewhat slow. Turns out I just wasn't using art canceling. Yeah, turns out that's a thing that I completely forgot existed. Well, no, I didn't even know it existed when I played Xenoblade 2. I was playing this game horribly wrong. I need to replay Xenoblade 2, now that I know how to play the game. Whatever. It's a fun enough combat system. It works. By far the weakest in the series, if you ask me, which is extra sad seeing what Torna did. Torna has a completely reworked combat system, and it's fantastic. It's basically Xenoblade 2, but sped up. Characters have unique abilities, including a special ability that allows them to do something at cost of something. For example, Laura is, I think, a damage boost or a high damage attack, in exchange for half of her HP. Not to mention, you can freely switch between the character you're controlling out of any character in your driver blade combo. And, unlike in Xenoblade 2's base game, where every character plays the same essentially, they all play uniquely, the blades are controllable and all have unique playstyles, and a lot of the playstyles you like are still available in the game. So if you enjoyed playing as Mithra, you can, like as Rex, you can still by playing as Mithra, and if you enjoyed playing as Morag, you can still do so by playing as Brigid. Generally, in my opinion, the worst character in this party of 9 is Hugo. And that's solely because he plays identical to Morag in every way, including his blades. It isn't anything against Morag, by the way, or the playstyle. It was just kind of disappointing to see a character that's 1-to-1 the same as another character. And overall, it is fantastic, and I love it. That's why I really dislike 2's engine, because this is literally the same game! It's a $20 DLC campaign that adds so much and fixes every issue. I really wish Torna was longer. And Xenoblade 3. Its combat engine is amazing. Any character can play as any character the same as Xenoblade 2. However, the difference is every playstyle is different. And it is fantastic. The combat takes advantage of the fact you went from 3 to 4 party members, depending on the game, I'm including X in this, to a whopping 6 to 7, depending on your point in the story. The combat is so fast. Enemies have buffed HP for obvious reasons. And frankly, a lot of the changes they made is so nice. For example, you can revive units without use of your chain attack meter. It can only be done by healers or anyone holding the memory bracelet. But it's a nice change. And the combat is so much faster, so much more fluid, and Ouroboros forms add an additional depth of depth, and actually makes you debate which character you're going to play as. I was going to play as Mio going into it because design-wise I love her design. And then I got access to Uni's Ouroboros form, which Liberty Wing is basically an emergency revive. It revives everyone on the field with a low amount of HP, around 300. Which isn't much, but if you're in a pinch, as long as Uni and Taion are available, you can revive everyone. So having that emergency button is incredibly useful. Although, Xenoblade 3's combat system is held back by the fact a good chunk of damage is done exclusively through chain attacks. Which leads us into the next section. We're still in combat, but we need to take a little bit of a break to talk about the chain attack system. And we're going to continue with Xenoblade 3, since, as I mentioned, literally all of the combat is done through chain attacks. Essentially, once you fill up a gauge, you can enter chain attacks, which gives you a damage boost. Xenoblade 3 has what is, in my opinion, the best chain attack system. It's fluid, it's quick, although barely anything is explained to you. So, I'll have to mark a point off for that. But, generally, the chain attack system is fantastic. Once you get a hang of it and figure it out, each character has their own unique attribute they can apply, as well as the class they're running, and heroes get their own special unique ones. Basically, your characters have orders, heroes get their own specific hero order, and heroes also get heroic chains. Which may sound overpowered and extremely complicated, but frankly it isn't. Attackers get a 1.25 TP boost if they're the first to go. Defenders have a higher chance to be restored depending on how much TP they have. And healers, as long as they aren't heroes, cannot finish the TP gauge. Once it hits 100, you activate a order. You get a Great at 100, Bravo at 150, and Amazing at 200 and beyond. This essentially allows you to get a ton of damage. I think Red Rain told me at one point he got 6 million damage in a single chain attack, which is frankly broken. But it's a great way to keep your allies alive, deal good damage, and buff your party. That's the big problem that holds Xenoblade 3's combat in your back, but frankly, considering chain attacks are still equally as fun as the main combat in this game, I don't mind. And it's actually worth holding on to them due to the XP boost. I've gotten up to 1000% experience from a foe during chain attacks. So, they're worth it and fun. Xenoblade 2's chain attack system is way too RNG heavy, as you can hit elements. Characters will try to hit the element opposite of their own, but if it doesn't have one, they will just pick at random, and you need to break an orb to go again for a chain attack. The only problem is, if you break multiple orbs, you may not be able to go subsequent times. And you may not even be able to break an orb, because the game might just choose to spite you and break 5 different orbs! None of which allow you to progress! Because the chain attack system is stupid! It's not bad. It's just, the problem is, and this is the general thing with Xenoblade 2, it's way too RNG heavy. It kind of just picks and chooses for you, which eliminates strategy, which eliminates the ability to play around it, leaving chain attacks to be a decent way to deal damage, but not reliable enough to be worth using over reviving your allies. Lastly, is Xenoblade 1. It is more like Xenoblade 2's than 3's, just with more control. Essentially, looping depends on skills you can get through your skill tree, which makes it more consistent, but kind of annoying because the skill tree system in the games isn't that fun. It's definitely one of the better ones in the series, although I should probably address Future Connected. Generally, all I have to say about Xenoblade 1's is very similar to 2's, just remove the inconsistency. Basically, it's Xenoblade 2's with a lot less RNG involved. And then there's Future Connected, which completely removed the chain attack system and completely replaced it. And it's way worse! Yeah. I don't have much to say about that system. Basically, you fill up your chain attack gauge and deal heavy damage, which is less than the chain attack if you know how to use it in any of these games, including 2, which is super RNG heavy and essentially kinda sucks. Basically, I don't have much to say on Xenoblade 1 because it's just a better version of 2's system. And it's only better because it isn't completely filled to the brim with random BS. Now, time to go on to the final 2 categories, which both happen to be weird, being 5-point categories. First up is music. All three of these games have standout soundtracks, and you've been listening to it this whole video. So instead of doing what I'd normally do and talking about the music, I love it all. I'm just going to say this and then play a few clips of tracks. Xenoblade 1, really good. Seriously, its score is amazing. Its main cutscene theme, especially the first time it plays in the cutscene loss, it just keeps building up till Fiora's death, and then everything that picks up at that exact moment, which is fantastic, and I love it. And then after that, Xenoblade 2 has by far the best score in the series, and Xenoblade 3's really solid, definitely the weakest. That is an X, because X decided to go with rap, which will be for X's own video, because this video is long enough without X. So, let's hear them. If the video just cut to around this point, then this section was removed due to copyright. Either way, here are the scores for music. And our final side quests, ironically enough. Xenoblade 3's side quests are fantastic. All of them are fun except for the gather item ones, and there aren't actually that many compared to the rest of the series. Xenoblade 2's side quests are generally fine, with the biggest problem being a lot of them are locked behind the stupid gacha system, and the ones that aren't are locked behind the stupid HM system that no one likes. And also, the ones that aren't locked behind those gacha systems are usually just give me the specific item quests. And Xenoblade 1 has one or two standout quests, that being Melancholy Tyrea and basically the entirety of Colony 6's questline, but aside from that, it's pretty underwhelming. And a lot of Xenoblade 1s are also deliver this. Although, rebuilding Colony 6 is fantastic, and one of my favorite subsections in an entire Xenoblade game. And I kind of wish we had it in Xenoblade 3, which we kind of do with the Colony system, but I would have rather had one that's more accurately like rebuilding Colony 6, even though we kind of do with Colony 0. Xenoblade 3 is weird in that case, but Xenoblade 1 is carried almost entirely by the Colony 6 quest line, while Xenoblade 2 is carried by its fun Blade quests, and Xenoblade 3 is carried by its amazing hero quests. So, yeah, basically, a lot of the games have decent quests and are mostly carried by one specific subset of quests or a specific quest line. Here are the final points. And before we go into this, we're going to talk about Xenoblade. Xenoblade 1 got a whopping, I cannot see that, 36 points or 7.2 out of 10, which is wrong. It just feels wrong. That game is like an easy 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for me. Which then leads us into Xenoblade 2, which somehow got an 8 out of 10. And then Xenoblade 3, which gets us to a whopping 43 or 8.6, which I'm going to talk about why I hate this system. Like, that's why when I review games, I do not give them numerical scores. Because you either pick them subjectively, because again, I'd say Xenoblade 1's like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, Xenoblade 3 is an easy 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, Xenoblade 2 is like an easy 7 or 6 out, 7 or 8 out of 10. But the problem is, you either pick them arbitrarily, or you do something like I did here, and use a numerical system. But that then should be consistent between reviews when certain games excel at certain things that others don't. For example, again, I love Persona 5. Gameplay department, it isn't that good. Story carries it. But if I were to use Persona 5 as my base metric for reviewing games, that'd be unfair to things like platformers, puzzle games, things that aren't story heavy. Essentially, this metric I don't like, because you either have to craft it to a specific game or pick it arbitrarily. And for example, Xenoblade 2 did so well because it scored really well in categories that matter less. It has some pretty good side content, it has the best soundtrack of the series, and has a really likable cast of characters. Some of the stuff that matters less than the other categories happens to be what Xenoblade 2 excels at, which then leads to it being better score-wise than 1, even though I would way rather play 1 any other day, just because 1 happens to excel at categories that to me matter more. Essentially, Xenoblade 1, 9.5 out of 10, Xenoblade 2, like 8 out of 10, Xenoblade 3, 10 out of 10. All three of these games are fantastic, though, and I highly recommend you pick them up, especially if you have a Switch. Does Xenoblade 2 go for $120 on eBay? Yes. Do I recommend it still? Just buy it on the eShop. But seriously, these games are worth playing if you have not, and if you've watched it all this way, I'm sorry. But yeah, arbitrarily is kind of just the best way to put it. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe and check out another one, especially since I'm working on a Xenoblade X video, or at least intend to release one sometime in the near future. So if you enjoyed this and want to see a review on X and the other Xeno games when I get around to them, please feel free to subscribe. I love this series and I will not stop talking about it.